All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Het.
I'm Eric.
And I am Stan.
And today we are going to be talking about Pokemon Sword and Shield regarding the expansions that were announced and some of the other announcements regarding Pokemon Sword and Shield. Sorry, I can't talk today, guys. Work with me here. So Sword and Shield, there's expansions. There's a controversy surrounding that. So we're going to be talking about that controversy. And then also whether or not we want to get the expansions for this game. And then Final Fantasy 15, there's another game coming out, an MMORPG announced for mobile that's going to try to have the same graphical fidelity as the main game on cell phone, at least attempt to anyways. So we're going to be talking about that. And then we have some quick news items that we're going to touch on here, mostly because they're breaking and we're still waiting more word. But we have Sony skipping E3 again in 2020. The Xbox Series X will be cross-gen with previous generations for the next 2 years. So no exclusive games on the new Xbox for 2 years. Then we have Xenoblade Chronicles. We have a release date potentially for that game, the remake. And then Tales of Arise, there's been a rating on the game and people are speculating about a possible release window. So we want to get into that. And then we have a Discord question from Tayson who says, what are your thoughts on the upcoming release of Phantasy Star Online 2 and the West? Are we excited for the game? And what do we think of its free-to-play model compared to other MMOs with a subscription like Final Fantasy 14? So we have a lot of topics that we're going to be hitting today. So hopefully, this isn't a 5-hour podcast, but if it is, we appreciate you all sticking in there with us. So on to our first topic here. We have Pokemon Sword and Shield. At a recent Pokemon only direct, there was a lot of Pokemon news that was released. The smallest tidbit that they started off with was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX. So basically this was a Nintendo DS game and they're remastering it and it's going to be available on March 6th, 2020. However, there is an eShop demo version that's available right now. And there's also a Pokemon Home app that was announced, which allows players to transfer Pokemon from Go into Sword and Shield one way. So you can't transfer, Pokemon from Sword and Shield to Pokemon Go. But in regards to either the app or Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team, do any of you plan on picking these hot items up?
The DLC, yes. Mystery Dungeon, maybe if I look into it.
Okay.
I mean, I like the art style it has in its remake, so it might be worth a look, but I've never actually gotten into the Mystery Dungeon series before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. I have never gotten into a Mystery Dungeon game. In fact, this announcement reminded me that was a thing. That's how off my radar it is,
Yeah.
Not really aware of that franchise very much.
Yeah. So me personally, not really my cup of tea. It is coming out officially on March 6, 2020, which is the same week as the 7 remake. So that really put nail in the coffin for me that I'm definitely not going to pick this up, at least on launch. I realize there's a demo available right now, but because I'm not going to pick it up when the game comes out, I'm not going to get it.
Yeah, that is very cool of them to release a demo that early, that then you can carry over your data, to the final game. And
Yeah.
it also is pretty cool that in a lot of these directs, whether it be for Smash Brothers or just a general direct or whatever, they really like to surprise you and have something available now, right? Like, be it a new game or like a new character for Smash Brothers or something, they like to, go into it and then they like to say, and that'll be ready tonight. Go play it now. That's a pretty good way to hype up your audience for something, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let people try it and then be able to carry that over for sure.
I really hope they do that with Metroid. Just a small side note. They like give the official announcement trailer for Metroid Prime 4 and then be like, and you can download the Metroid Prime trilogy for Switch right now.
I'd be
God, I
all over
really
that.
hope Nintendo does that. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's always a good option to do that. So definitely give them praise for that. But the big news here, the big thing that I think most people were wanting to see here is the expansion pass or DLC for Pokemon Sword and Shield has been announced. We got a lot of info about that, and it's sparked some anger among certain members of the community. But let's go over some of the stuff that's going to be in the DLC so that way people listening to this, whether you're checking us out on YouTube right now or you're listening to our audio version, that way you're up to date so you can, follow along with, Eric's gushing praise or his anger regarding this topic. I'm just giving Eric a hard time here. So the two pieces of DLC are called the Isle of Armor and the Crown of Tundra. And both are going to add 200 plus Pokemon into the game in total. To be clear, both of them are going to add basically the same 200 Pokemon. I think I actually read somewhere that Isles of Armor and Crown of Tundra are going to have like a handful of exclusive Pokemon in each of their DLCs. So, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. Collectively, with the Isle of Armor and the Crown of Tundra, you will get 200 plus new Pokemon, meaning Pokemon from prior generations coming into the fold or new Pokemon. However, the versions that are going to come out, whether you have Sword and Shield, whether you have Sword or Shield, there will be exclusive content for those that purchase that DLC based upon the version of the game that you bought. So the DLC in total is going to cost $29.99, with the Crown of Tundra coming out in fall 2020 and Isle of Armor coming out in June. Basically, the Isle of Armor is going to be an island atmosphere. You're going to have caves and sand dunes for people to explore. The Crown of Tundra is going to be like snowy landscapes and mountains to explore with a giant tree in the center that feels very out of place. It seems like they wanted us to know that, yes, this tree is going to feel out of place. A free update.
Tree. Probably something like that.
Yeah. A free update is going to allow players to trade for the newly added Pokemon, even if they don't purchase the expansions. So if you don't want to buy this DLC and you want to try to trade for all 200 Pokemon, you can do that. That's going to be quite the hassle, but you can do that. So the controversy surrounding this, because the DLC actually looks pretty good, the controversy surrounding this is that both Sword and Shield are getting their own version for these expansion passes with exclusive content. The exclusive content is pretty minimal. I mean, we're talking about like certain trainers only show up in one version or the other. You can talk with them. There's a little side quests that are exclusive to each one. And then like certain Pokemon are not going to show up in the DLC for depending on what version of the game you started with. So there's exclusive content. And if you want all of that content, people are saying, hey, I bought Pokemon Sword and Shield. That's $120. Now I have to buy the same DLC twice, totaling $180 just to get the full experience. And some people are starting to feel a little peeved about that. And the other part of this also is that opinions are mixed regarding the 200 Pokemon editions. People are glad to have them, but they felt like those 200 Pokemon should have been in the base game. If you remember, we kind of talked about this in a prior podcast episode with Game Freak, that people were pointing out some of the corners that Game Freak cut, and Game Freak was saying, it's just too difficult for us to do this now at this point with, the graphical fidelity of these games. And then they, here Game Freak comes around and says, oh, and in June, you're going to have all these new additional Pokemon. So some people are like, hey, you're just putting this stuff behind a paywall that used to not be there. So that's kind of a summary of the controversy. We're going to kind of pass it around here and see what we all think about this controversy. And then later we're going to talk about whether or not we're going to get the DLC and just if we have anything left over. But to start us off here, Eric, how do you feel about this controversy surrounding this expansion? Is this something that you think people have a good point at being upset about, or what do you feel?
It has the name. It has the name DLC written. Of course, people are going to be upset. They don't get things for free. They'll be upset. Now, the thing I heard essentially is people who already own both Sword and Shield are mad that they have to buy the DLC for both versions. May I ask, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, is there a huge majority base of people who buy both versions of the game? I don't know anyone that isn't like outside the really hardcore Pokemon scene who buys both versions of the game and play them both to completion. And on top of that, that's $120 investment to get into the Pokemon Sword and Shield. So kind of how I look at it is, if you can afford to buy both games, chances are you can afford to get or pay for both DLCs. So that comes with, that's just the caveat if you want to just 100% these Pokemon games is, and we're in the DLC era on top of that, you should have expected this. And honestly, for how much content I see in the game, I think $30 is probably going to be pretty reasonable, especially since 200 Pokemon are being added. So
yeah, but like
I don't really see a problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you have both versions of the game, though, you have to buy that DLC twice, and there's not really much of a difference, except they made like very small changes. They very easily could have just let you buy the DLC and it work with whatever version that you have, and then maybe if they wanted to charge like $5 or something to get the like extra 5 Pokemon or something like that, or with the other version. I do think that there is a slight point to be had. I mean, because I can see lots of people who may have bought both versions, one for Timmy and one for Johnny for Christmas, and now that this DLC is coming out, Nintendo knows, okay, you're going to make Johnny and Timmy mad. No, you need to buy, the DLC twice. Granted, they're probably not playing on the same Switch, but you get my drift. But basically, the way I feel about this is like, I'm kind of conflicted about it because on like the spectrum of appropriate DLCs and inappropriate, like we have Final Fantasy 15 on the very inappropriate way to do DLC, Witcher 3 on the very appropriate way. And I feel like this kind of like goes right in the middle. I mean, like I think the island atmosphere and snowy mountains seems cool, but I think with these people that are upset about this price point, I think they kind of have a point. I get it. Like if you spent this much money, what's $60 more? But like if the difference is so small, that's kind of crappy of them to do that. I just don't think that that didn't need to be done. I mean, it's not going to affect the majority of people buying this game, but I really don't think that it's going to be $60 worth of additional content. Like if
I can see any kind of viewpoint on this, it is that people feel, because when you brought up Witcher 3, it made me think to myself for a second that there are people who believe that they didn't get their full $60 worth from this DLC, or I'm sorry, from the full game, and they feel a little entitled to get the DLC or the stuff that should have been in the game for free, like the new Pokemon should have been added and stuff like that. So that's probably another perspective that's coming in. And like Witcher 3, you got a complete game out of that. So something like Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine felt like additions to an already complete game. So, but there's some people, especially heavy fans of the series, probably look at it as, I got an incomplete feeling game, and now I'm being charged more to get a quote unquote more complete experience.
Well, and this is kind of the direction I was going in, is that, and I'm glad you brought it up, is that, I mean, it's one thing with Witcher 3 or Final Fantasy 15, where a game that like clearly took an enormous amount of money to create. Okay. But there was a lot of very good like points being made about some of the corners being cut with this game. And we kind of talked about it a little bit when we gave our impressions. It's a perfectly fine Pokemon game, but it's not the biggest budget. And this is a game that sells millions and millions and millions of copies. And they kind of they cut some corners, specifically in the Wildlands. There was this meme going around on Twitter where they just copy and pasted the same exact tree multiple times over, right? Instead of like coming up with different trees, they just copied and pasted that same texture. People were comparing like insides of buildings, and like it was like the same building was in different towns, that like they didn't even like change the architecture or the insides of it. So people are pointing out like, hey, you cut corners with this game. And now you're coming out with this DLC, which is kind of addressing some of that. We have more areas besides just the Wildlands, which people really liked. But then, you know, you're going on top of that, making someone who already spent $120 feels like they kind of got screwed. Now you want them to spend 180. I mean, it's like, I totally get it. But at the same time, like, it's not going to affect me because I didn't buy both versions of the game. So, you know, I don't know. Stan, you've been kind of quiet over there. What do you think?
He has been gone for a little while now.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, he got disconnected. He's trying to get back on.
Oh, well, that's why he's been quiet.
That is why he's been a little bit quiet.
Okay. So I don't know, like, does that resonate with you at all though? Just like some of the people who feel this way, even a little bit with you, or are you just kind of like, no, like,
I understand why people would feel like that.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not gonna be ignorant and just say it's all black and white and people are just being dumb or something. No, I mean there is reason behind. There's always reason behind why people are upset. People are usually not just upset to be upset. So, I mean, I can level that far, but it seems like just such a more of a stretch for this one. So it really comes down to the argument of, do you really feel like you got your $60 worth out of the Pokemon game? And if you didn't, then you may feel that this DLC is charging you. Does feel like a little bit of a kick to the ankle.
yeah,
Even though you'll most likely buy it. But
yeah.
But I understand. But you know me, I've always kind of believed that the recent hate towards the new Pokemon game has been a little overblown.
Right.
Even though, like I said, I understand. I just think it's over. I think some people have just gone a little overboard on the game. So that's just really what I think about.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at both sides of the perspective.
Right.
But me personally, it's a $30 DLC. You get 200 more Pokemon. You get tons more content to play with. Sounds like a good time to me. If you're one of those few people that actually get both versions of the game, then that's, I mean, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, especially in this DLC era.
So do you think
you're going to have to purchase both potentially?
So do you think the DLC should have just been, you think it would have been better if they just charged $30 for the DLC and then whatever version of the game you got the DLC? Like that you didn't have to buy the DLC twice.
In terms of making the DLC different, is that what you're asking me?
Well, they made it different, but they made it like you got 4 different Pokemon or something like that, and like you meet like a couple different trainers. So it's like marginally different. They made it different enough to where if you want all the Pokemon, you have to spend $30 more.
Or you can make some friends and trade with them.
Yeah, but I don't know, man.
You don't have to spend 30. You don't. I'm just saying you don't have to spend that $30. No one is forcing you.
Well,
unless you have to be that 100% completionist.
Well, no one forced me to buy all this Final Fantasy 15 DLC, but I'm a fan and I wanted to like complete experience, so I bought it all. But I still think it's crappy, right?
Yeah, see, that's another understanding where it comes from, because it's really consumer perspective. Because I think that's the first thing people will actually try to point out towards me is that I had strong feelings against the DLC in FF15 because it felt like an incomplete product. So, like I said, I understand, but in my own personal take for Pokemon, when I played through Sword and I did beat it and I did go through the stuff, I did feel like I did get a complete experience out of it, even if the game felt really too easy for me.
Right.
Like, just like maybe a little over the top too easy, even the end game content stuff.
Right.
But I did feel like I got a complete package out of it, me personally. Something like FF15, I did not get that feeling, and the DLCs did not
help
the matter.
What I would say with me, where I'm at, is I do think that they could have just had, like, basically, let me back up here. I think that back in the 90s, when they would release 2 Game Boy games, those games did not, like Red and Blue. Okay, whatever. It was a marketing thing. It worked. And kids bought 2 versions of the game. But if I remember correctly, the Game Boy games were not $60 a piece. You know, you weren't playing it on a $300 console. And in 2019, 2020 here, you know, you're looking at people that may have 2 Switches. Like, you have two $60. Like, they need to just get past this idea of releasing 2 versions of the game. That's just silly. Like, there's barely any difference between the two. Like, just, I don't know, man. Just because people will, I don't think you necessarily need to. I would be totally fine with next generation of Pokemon if they had one game that was Pokemon and they were like, all the craps in this one game. And then if they want to come out with a DLC, they come out with a $30 DLC that adds 200 Pokemon, and like, it's $30, half the price of the game you just paid $60 for, you know, 4 months ago, and it has 200 more Pokemon in it, and you've spent $90. That's a lot of money on a really low budget looking game. Like, that's fine. That's fine. I don't think you need to keep. So I do see, I do agree that they could have had one DLC, but I am with you though. Like, the difference is so small, you could probably trade for that. Now, where do you fall on the line regarding the 200 Pokemon editions? Because this one, I am totally like baffled that people are upset about this, because like, what did you want them to do? Like, you were mad that they didn't have all these Pokemon in it. And then they're adding the Pokemon. They're adding a lot, 200 Pokemon. And now you're like, well, like, it should have been in the base game. Well, yeah, it should have been in the base game, but it's not. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's not. Just be happy you're getting 200 more Pokemon. Like, I guess, like, that's a lot of Pokemon. I mean,
this goes back to what I was saying before. It's they don't believe the base game is a full game, so they believe that the 200 Pokemon should be included for free.
Well, would they have not been upset if the $30 DLC had no additional Pokemon? It had 0 additional Pokemon. It was only new areas. I feel like Game Freak would have just got crucified.
Yeah. I mean, it's a complicated subject, to be sure, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I purchased Breath of the Wild DLC and everything, and enjoy it. I think at least on Nintendo stands, they do have ethics with their DLC, at least right now. Not so much their mobile side, but
Right.
at least their what am I saying? The Switch side of things. I don't know why my brain kind of clicked off there for a moment. Yeah. But
my mind's moving slow tonight too. Sometimes I'm searching for a word and I can't find it.
I just keep going back to a parallel of FF15. That there are some people that feel like they didn't get their $60 worth, like I didn't feel like I didn't, and I felt like the stories that should have been added in it should have been part of the base game and not cut out as DLC. But the difference with here, it feels like this is an actual addition to the game and not like trying to fill in plot points to a story. Then like someone will argue, it's like, well, that should have been filled in the 200 Pokemon. But that argument is always going to come back. So I don't know. It's just, how much do you feel entitled to the content in the base game as compared to what the DLC is offering?
Yeah. So let's transition into this and then final thoughts with this. Do you plan on getting both parts of the DLC for the 30? Basically, do you plan on buying the $30 expansion pass, or are you going to pass, and why?
I think I will.
Okay.
I had enough fun with the main game, and my wife has Shield. I have Sword, she has Shield.
Oh,
So she'll likely purchase the DLC for Shield, and I'll likely purchase the DLC for Sword.
so you will be one of these people that spent $180 on this.
Yes, in a way, but not all for me.
Okay.
When I did want to trade Pokemon or get Pokemon, I would, pick up hers or just ask her like, "Hey,
Well,
can you turn on your Pokemon real quick and
here's what
give
she
me
could
this
do.
one?"
Here's what she could do. She could get the DLC, and then you could sit there and try to trade all 200 Pokemon.
Okay, I kind of want to experience the content too. So
No, I'm just giving you a hard time. I know.
I wonder how long the content is though. Like,
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
like we get 2 expansion areas within the region or something like that. So I would imagine it's probably combined both, probably another 15 to 20 hours of game.
Yeah.
So, and eventually they're going to come out with they said they're not going to do a third version Pokemon anymore. This is supposed to replace that.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
I did.
We're not
That's
getting
a
our
good point.
Pokemon gun
Darn.
anymore. Because I was about to say maybe they'll come out with like a Game of the Year edition where it's like a third version that has all the DLC and has like all the content for both. But no, I don't think that's happening. I think the DLC routes is what's going to happen now.
Yeah. One thing's for sure, they're going to make a ton of money because, I mean, $60 for their game in November, and then they're going to be spreading this out across the whole year. Man, that's going to be some good money going into the holidays for sure, with all those side plush toys and comic books and everything else. I mean, they know how to do this and bring the money home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm going to pick it up just because I like the Wildlands. That was my favorite part of that game. And adding like the island atmosphere and then like the mountains, snowy mountains, I think will give that game a lot of like diversity that the game needed. So I'm planning on picking it up. I mean, I wasn't going to catch all the Pokemon anyways, so the 200 additional Pokemon is not really much of a draw for me, but that really like the extra areas is what draws me to it. So for that reason, like I'm okay with it. It's not, I mean, we got all the initial gyms in the base game. It's not like they only had like 4 of the gyms and I needed to pay $30 to get the extra 4 gyms. Like I had the complete gym experience. So I'm going to get it. So
yeah, the way I feel is like if they cut off like you can't do the last 2 gyms of the game unless you purchase the DLC or something like that. I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty messed up. But
yeah,
I don't know. You get a full game out of it, and then the expansion gives even more content on top of that. Sorry, folks, if you didn't feel like the base game was enough, but it is technically, I believe, it's a full game.
Stan, are you back with us?
Yes, I believe I am back. Fingers crossed.
Stan got so upset he left the conversation. Do you want to kind of quickly summarize your thoughts on this situation before we move on, or?
Sure. Well, that'll be fast because I don't have Pokemon Sword and Shield.
So you're not getting the DLC. Okay.
I will not be getting the DLC. Maybe someday they will bundle it, you think, altogether?
Well, I think Eric just said they said they're not going to do that.
Oh, they did? Okay.
There's not going to be a third version of the game.
I see. Well, we'll
no
see.
Pokemon gun, I'm sorry.
I can see both sides of it, right? Because on the one hand, it's like, yes, probably these Pokemon could have been in the base game. Like, that is the criticism, right? But then on the flip side, you're not having to repurchase the game again for the ultra sun, ultra moon situation, right?
Right.
So it's a double-edged sword, I guess.
Yeah.
You could say.
Yep.
Double-edged sword and shield.
Yep. Oh, I like what you did there. All right. Well, there has it. We'll see how this develops, and we'll let you know if we change our opinion. But let's move on here. We got a little bit of housekeeping here. We have. I just want to bring up the fact that we are media partners with RPGFan.com. So if you haven't checked them out, make sure you go to their website and check it out. They do RPG news, game news, soundtrack reviews. They have other RPG podcasts. We're also featured on there, but they have Random Encounter and Retro Encounter. These are 2 additional RPG-centered podcasts. And they also have a YouTube channel that they're trying to get going here. They're starting to do more video-based content. So make sure you check out RPG Fan. Really appreciate their support. And I also want to give you guys a little rundown of some of the stuff that we are going to be doing on our YouTube page. Now, I just finished Crisis Core for the second time. I know, Stan, you finished yours. You were saying in the past week or so, and Eric's been kind of toying around with it and shaking his head at some of the things with it. So we're planning on having a discussion here in the late January timeframe. We do have a date lined out that we're going to record that, but you can look forward to a Crisis Core discussion later in the month. We are planning on doing a Final Fantasy VII discussion in February. That's on the PS1 version. And then this is all leading up to the Final Fantasy VII Remake in March, assuming the game's not delayed, which at this point, I don't think it will be. We're also planning on giving at least our initial impressions on the Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC that's coming out in about 10 days. So we're really excited.
Next week.
Yeah. Okay, next week. I thought it was on the 23rd.
It is on the 23rd.
That is next week. So next week, that DLC. So that's just some of the stuff we have going down. If you want to make sure you're not missing some of this content, please be sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if this is the audio version, make sure you follow us there and come check our YouTube page out. We're trying to do some more stuff here. So moving on here, we have Final Fantasy 15 MMO has been announced for mobile. Now, this is not going to be like a Final Fantasy 14 styled mobile version of, our Final Fantasy 14 scope. This is just going to be a mobile version of Final Fantasy 15. I cannot talk today, guys. I'm sorry. Final Fantasy 15 on a cell phone. It's a mobile version. And the developer, they're working with I think it's a South Korean developer, JSC Games. And basically what they said was, let me get this up here because I want to show some of the promo art for this. It's pretty awesome. Basically what they said is they're going to try to get as close as they can to the graphical fidelity of Final Fantasy 15 on the PS4 on the phone. Obviously, they're not going to get to that quality, but they are going to try to get there to some degree. So let me get some of this on here. All right. So we have some promo art here for this game. I've been seeing over the internet that this is an actual image that's been released to kind of promote the game. We're expecting a trailer later in the year. They said mid part of this year. So whatever that means, probably June, July timeframe. But this is the promo art that we're seeing right now. And a lot of people have been pointing out that we have young Noctis, then we have old Ignis and old Gladio, then we have young Iris, then we have King Regis, then we have Nyx from Kingsglaive, and then there's new characters, which is cool. New characters are cool, but then Prompto's missing. So like you have all these characters, but Prompto's missing. And now the developer did address this by saying, it is an alternate timeline that this MMORPG is going to be taking place in. So, we could see characters that didn't have as much screen time in the game, but this doesn't explain why there's old Gladio and young Noctis or why Prompto's missing. So
maybe Prompto never laid off to McDonald's. And here we are.
He didn't make the crew. He didn't lose the weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to go that direction. I don't know if I think this was just an accident.
Just left him out. The fourth party member. We forgot the fourth party member. Whoops.
Yeah. What do you guys think about this?
it's obviously the way I see it. It's obviously not made for us. I mean, I can make fun of the fact that it's another FF15 thing, but it is kind of beating a dead horse. But the way I see it, this definitely looks like it's going to cater more to Chinese markets than
Western markets.
Western markets. So it may come out for the Western side, but I think all the money made from it is going to be in China.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be receiving a Western release also, from what I saw. So, it's using Unreal Engine. So, I mean, that's kind of cool, I guess. I mean, it's still a mobile game that's probably going to be filled with microtransactions. And it seems like they haven't even done their research if Prompto's not even on your artwork. But you have but then you have Gladio's. No, that's not Gladio's dad. That's the Emperor. Never mind. But still, you have old Gladio, young Noctis, no Prompto, and then you have freaking like King Regis on here, and it's like, well what's the story? Because
Right.
this was the entire game, like freaking. Well, I don't want to spoil the game, but something happens in the town. This sparks Noctis to go on this entire journey, and like you're like, well, I guess like these things didn't happen. I don't know. It does have Luna Freya at the center, so I wonder if somehow she's going to play a bigger role. I mean, that will be one positive aspect, I guess, but I just don't feel like this seems like a cash grab to me. I don't feel as
It
if
is, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
If you look in the article, the Silicon article you're looking at,
Yeah.
notice how they only advertise the combat and the story, which is already going to tell you that those are going to be the two main focal points, and they're not going to really add any other RPG elements beyond that. And that's a setup for a lot of mobile games, like Dissidia, Opera Omnia, and stuff like that. You get story, but you're choosing like places on the map, and you're just doing combat, and then you're going back to that map UI screen. That is very likely what this game is going to be, and it's going to be kind of like the Star Ocean free-to-play game, where it does have really nice graphics for a mobile game, but it's just combat. Go back to what your manager menu, combat, manager menu, get story, manager menu, stuff like that. It's going to be another one of those, and you're probably going to recruit a lot of people. You will probably get Noctis, Prompto, Ignis, and Gladio as starting people, and either you will get these new characters through a story or some form of gacha system.
Yeah.
And you'll probably get a lot of characters in this game, and they'll constantly be updated. And the parallel universe thing is so they can structure the story as the typical cash grab type of deal.
Here's the thing. I think you're entirely correct. But what bothers me is Square Enix used to take pride in their flagship properties, right? So, example, they rebuilt 14 because it wasn't up to par with what they wanted. Back when Sakaguchi was with the company, he used to say he didn't believe in sequels because he felt it diluted the brand. Like,
then Yoichi Wada came in. He's like, hey, we could make a sequel to Final Fantasy X, and all hell broke loose.
Yep.
Yeah, but like this is clearly low effort, and it's going to be a very small percentage, but some people's only experience with 15, and it's just like Square doesn't seem to care, right? It's just like, how much money can we make? We got a book, we got an anime. They already have Final Fantasy 15, A New Empire, that other mobile game that's like robbing people blind.
And the Pocket Edition.
Yeah, the Pocket Edition, like it's just, and I'm the fishing, VR fishing.
Yeah, don't forget the VR fishing game.
Yes. Like, it's just like, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, and like, it would be one thing if all these things were awesome. Like, if there was all awesome content, that would be fantastic, but it's not all awesome. The best thing of the entire thing was probably the anime. And I will acknowledge like the game, the main game is probably the anime, and the main game is probably the best of everything that they've done. but it just makes me wonder, like, is like all this? Yeah, I know, Eric. We didn't like the game, but but I'm just saying, like, the main game was probably better than VR fishing. I'm just like, maybe not. I haven't played VR fishing. I shouldn't crap on it, but
Yeah, don't criticize something you haven't played yet, Hat.
well, sometimes you just know.
Maybe the VR fishing the best damn thing to ever come out.
But like, is this going to be a new trend for Square, or do you think that they're just
Yes.
trying to recoup money for 15? Like it just was in development for so long. It was on a new engine. They lost all this money. Like they wanted 15 to sell like 80 million copies. It sold like 12 or something
Yeah.
like that, or 10. Like, are they just trying to like recoup money? And that's why they're doing this, but they're not going to do this for future Final Fantasy games. Like, because I really hope that this is not the case with the 7 remake, that we start seeing all these crappy freaking like mobile games that are like clearly just like robbing people just to get like extra materia or something, you know?
Yeah.
I think they tried. I think what they thought to themselves with FF15 was they could create a franchise out of this one game alone, and they wanted to, heavily market it. Do a semi-live service type of deal with it. Always making versions of it and stuff like that. They wanted to get the most they could out of this game, and I think it really backfired. I think and I've said this before in the past, but I think for FF16 they really need to go back to the basics and make just one single really good game, and just make it a full blown awesome story, world, characters, has a beginning, middle, end. All the content is there, nothing is pulled out, and then afterwards, after the game is successfully, or it's out and it's successful, then you can create content, maybe additional content, maybe additional DLC with new boss fights, or you can create like a mobile demake of it if you want to. It's like, but just focus first on making the initial game good. And I think for 15 they were just really over ambitious, and thinking that this was going to sell so great that they were already getting people to come in and just like milk it for all it's worth before it even came out.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. Like their focus was all wrong here. And this is just more evidence of that. And it's just baffling that years later, they're still doing this. But it does speak volumes of like the fact that they still think this is a marketable item, that they haven't beat this to the ground. But
I think it's actually just their business strategy going forward, unfortunately. I found a quote here from almost 3 years ago at this point, right? 2017, in May of 2017. Square Enix CEO Yosuke Matsuda said this about like their plans for the future. He said, "Titles that have become global hits recently have tended to be offered via the games as a service model, and we believe this is going to be the mainstream model for mainstream model for gaming in the future. In developing future titles, we will approach game design with a mind to generate reoccurring revenue streams." That's the CEO of the company 3 years ago, and here we are, 3 years later, and we have games like, this
particular mobile game,
yeah, this
New Empire, yeah,
New Empire, Dissidia Opera Omnia, which, from what I understand, is not a terrible game, but it is clearly designed for reoccurring revenue.
Well, they were also trying to make a MMO out of the, was it the Kingsglaive DLC or whatever? I'm trying to remember what it was called, but it was basically an online version of 15 where you played with other people and did missions.
Brotherhood.
Oh, it was like a beat 'em up type game.
No. This was actually in the game, 15 in the game.
Multiplayer, yeah.
Yeah, it was a multiplayer.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. Was it called Brotherhood? I don't think it was called Brotherhood. I think it was called. I don't know what it was called.
Well, but then you also had like Dissidia Final Fantasy, the new one that they tried to turn into an esport. And if you played the game, there's very clearly like a loot box type of system in there, but that was the same year that EA caught so much flack for the loot boxes, right? So they never turned it on. But like it's the structure is very clearly there. Like you get random rewards,
Right.
So yeah, like unfortunately, I think this is currently their business plan.
Sometimes they do an okay job with stuff like they do have a mobile version of Final Fantasy 11 coming out, but it's actually going to be a full MMO and not simply just a free to play game type of deal.
It's definitely
so there
possible.
is that.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. The phones nowadays are very powerful. It's definitely possible to have a good game on a phone and be an MMO.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to give credit where credit is due, the first Brave Exvius, not War of Divisions, that we haven't gotten yet. It's a decent game. I've been playing through it, and the free to play aspects are really not intrusive. Like I've been going through the story just fine, and not once have they like physically blocked me off from playing the game. And it actually has an original character and not trying to feed or original story and characters and not simply trying to feed off your nostalgia. Like you can summon visions of famous characters, but they're not integral to the story or anything. It's just they're there. But you still have your main characters. So I think that is a more right way to do it if it needs to be in that structure. But this one looks like, I mean, I won't judge it till I see it. But
I'm totally judging it.
If it's made for China in mind, it's definitely going to be a very cash grabby game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that like we're kind of spinning in circles here at this point. Like it doesn't look like it's very promising. There's a possibility, but it's probably not going to be. We're baffled that, like some of the character design choices, it seems like they didn't do their research. We're kind of baffled that it looks like Square just was like no quality control over this at all.
It's completely outsourced.
Just make money. That's it. That's their only requirement. So, doesn't make us excited about it. But like Eric was pointing out, there's a way to go about it that could be good. So I don't know. I'm anxious to see that trailer that's coming out mid part of this year. Because I think that's really going to be like the nail in the coffin officially. I mean, this was not a very good opening, right?
Yeah.
This was like walking outside without your pants on, just totally forgetting the prompto. It was totally not, just baffling to me, right? But that trailer is going to be the deciding factor here, I think. Moving on though, we want to kind of quickly address the fact, well, I guess this isn't going to be quick, we'll see. But the PS5, Sony came out and said that the PS5 and their games, they're not going to be at E3 again this year. And, E3 came out with a little response that basically said, our show's still awesome and we're still going to have lots of things here. I just summarized that. That's not precisely what they said. But, PS5 is not going to be at E3 again this year. And there was also some Xbox Series X news also, but let's kind of dive into this PS5 thing real quick here. What do y'all think about the PS5 not going to be at E3? Or I should say Sony in general. So no games or no first party games and no PS5 show.
Good.
These
companies should make these trailers and present the content they want to present on their own terms. How many times have we gotten, like, remember Ubisoft with Watch Dogs? They showed a fake trailer of what the game was going to look like, and it looked absolutely nothing like that. It's not really because they were trying to trick people. The thing is, they had nothing to show for E3. So they're desperately putting something together to show to the audience to make sure they had something that year. Yeah. If these companies just played on their own terms, then they could release that Watch Dogs trailer when they're ready to show it. E3 really puts a time limit on people, and you have to fight against other people. So
Yeah.
like if you know a Nintendo Direct's coming on this date, you can be like, oh, well, let's not do that date. Let's do it next week and have our own presentation. Especially when the news is getting, if there's not as much news, we have the internet now. We have the power to do this. Like even low budget companies have the power to do this. So I think this is something that needs to be embraced more.
Right.
Maybe E3 can be a show to just like showcase some stuff you have that you have ready, but it's not like something you feel like it's mandatory to be there because it's not the 90s anymore. It's not the early 2000s anymore. You don't. It's not like you get a one time per year chance type of deal. It's it, like the possibilities are really endless with the internet, and both Sony and Nintendo have realized this and doing their own thing. And while the state of plays have been hit or miss, Sony does have that grand understanding that they can do things on their own terms and they don't need something like E3 to hold their hand.
Well, I think that I agree with you entirely. The only caveat is that Sony has over 100 million people in their user base right now, their player base, and that's Nintendo and Xbox combined. So I think that E3, especially with the PS5 coming out in December, I think that that show they would have painted the walls red if Sony wanted them to be there. I definitely think the show would have happened on their terms, whatever they were. But I do agree with you. Just that pressure of having to put something out when it's not ready, it makes a lot of people upset. It creates a lot of hypes. That's why we got games like Final Fantasy 15 or Versus 13 or 7 Remake. They were announced like way in advance before they were even like a demo or anything available or any kind of playable state, just, a CG trailer. So I do agree on that front, but I do think from the Sony's perspective, it is a little weird because your system's coming out in December. You skipped it last year. That the PS5 is still going to have a presence at E3 because I'm assuming some third-party publishers are going to be wanting to show their game. I mean, maybe Square or another company, and the games are clearly going to be coming out on the PS5. They may even want people to be able to play the games during the show. And are they not going to play it on a PS5? Are they going to make it play it on a PS4? Are they going to play it on an Xbox? Or are they going to like require companies to like keep the PS5 in like a wooden box and no one's allowed to see it? Like it's really weird, and I totally get why they're doing this. I think that they want to keep like everything Eric said. In addition to, I think they want to keep their hand close to the heart here because Microsoft is just sitting there like, how much you going to charge for this thing? How much? Okay, we'll cut it by $50, or we'll come in like just $50 above it, and we'll say we're 12 teraflops, you're 10, right? Like, but we're $50 more. I mean, I think they're trying to keep a lot of stuff secret, but it's just I feel like it's weird, and it puts some people in a really bad position to do that. So I hope that at the very least we get to see what the PS5 looks like before E3, so that hopefully we can get some like actual playtime with some actual PS5 titles, if there are any that are going to be shown. But I imagine there are. So, Stan?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like E3 is normally where you demo the new console coming, right?
Right.
Maybe it just won't be ready by then, and then they're planning to have their own event kind of closer to launch.
But it's holiday 2020 is when this thing's supposed to come out. So.
Yeah, so maybe like in
conference,
September or October, I don't know. But you do want people to demo the games live, right? Especially since, from what we know, they have a different controller, like for this new console, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's supposed to have much more enhanced rumble and haptic feedback, right? So it is kind of a little baffling, right? That you're gonna announce your new console and people have to be able to try it at some point, right? If not like the press and then eventually, you know, average Joe, right, before it goes on sale, I would think, right? That's kind
Yeah.
of because you want them to demo it and then write all those articles about how great it is and get the clicks and get people excited about it, right?
Well,
So
Sony has been kind of shot across the bow to traditional ways to promote your content, though, because if you remember, I mean, they acknowledged the PS5 and basically announced it in an interview with Wired. Like,
yeah,
instead of like having like a presentation or anything, like they just were like, nope, we're just going to talk to a journalist about it.
That
Or
is true.
that's
There's been
true.
some
Yeah.
really weird ways of them announcing the PS5, like a random like for PS5 from a random third party game at the Game Awards show.
Hmm.
yeah,
It's like they're probably like, oh, people know PS5's coming. Just who cares?
but they made such a big deal about the PS5 logo.
Right.
That was like this. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I wonder if if their head is starting to get a little too big, you know.
that's what I'm like this. Yeah. This feels a little snobby to me in a way, like,
Yeah.
that's beneath us.
Hey, if
Yeah.
they got backwards compatibility for PS1, 2, 3, and 4, their head can be as big as they want.
That's what I'm wondering, if anything's not going to be ready for them to announce. I don't think it's going to be. I'm 100% sure they have the hardware locked down. I mean, if it's coming out in holiday 2020, I highly doubt they're like at the point where over the summer they're not going to have a console you could play. I don't think that. I do think that they want to avoid is the PS3 going to be backwards compatible? Like
Oh, if
how
anything,
many?
they're probably
Yeah, but
going to be in production pretty soon.
that's what, but yeah, I mean, but like a lot of this stuff is going to be emulation based, like software based. I don't think they're actually putting a PlayStation 3 inside of a PlayStation 5. So, like,
No.
so I think that they're still trying to, they're not ready to talk about, like, well, how many PS3 games are going to work? How many PS4 games are going to work? Should gamers trade in their PS4 Pro for a PS5? Is it going to be that backwards compatible, or should they still hold on to their PS4 just in case if they want to play their PS4 game still? I mean, there's going to be a lot of things like that could turn out really bad. Like if I turn in my PS4 Pro for a PS5 because they say it's backwards compatible, but then it only works with like 60% of games and they didn't tell me that. I mean, or like they said it's going to work with the PS3 or the PS2 and that's why I bought it and it's not as compatible as they thought it was going to be. Or maybe Microsoft drops the price on their console and now Sony wants to be more competitive, right? So they're going to start removing some of that backwards compatibility. I guess maybe that might be the area where they're not quite ready to answer those questions, I think anyways. So
True, but I hope I hope they don't just announce all those specifics, all those details of the console like in one of their state of plays because,
where you
the
can't
state of play has been pretty lackluster in my opinion, so far. So I would think they would still have some kind of event where someone comes out on a stage, right, and lifts a thing and reveals the form factor and the design of the controller and everything, and
Well,
then
that's what their press conferences are for. They do have those.
yeah, like they need something like that, whether it be at E3 or not. They can't just rely purely on kind of the digital marketing, right? People need to get this machine hands-on experience with it at some point before it comes out. So I, I would think that even though they're not going to E3, they would at least host their own event of some kind.
I predict that by next month or March, they're going to have a gigantic announcement and show off everything type of deal. Like have an audience there and show off the thing, and probably exclusive for the press, not like just anyone can walk in type of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know like even Nintendo when they announced the Switch, they had a reveal event, right? And they're the ones who just do everything digital, right? They don't even have a E3 conference for many years. They have like a digital a direct on the same day, right?
Yeah.
But yet they still had a conference to reveal the console and show people on stage like playing with it and show different games and how they work with the controllers and everything. So
right. Well, this kind of leads us into the similar topic, which we can still talk about the PS5, but um, Xbox Series X, which is the next Xbox, they came out recently and basically said that their primary focus for the next 2 years after the launch of the Series X is still going to be primarily on the former generation. So supporting the Xbox One X, which is like their pro model of their current Xbox, because they want, the 50 million people that have supported them, they don't want them to feel like, hey, I just bought this series, Xbox One X, or I bought an Xbox, and now all of your content's coming out on this new Xbox. So basically, they're all their games for 2 years, all of them. First party titles are going to be backwards cross gen. Basically, it's going to be made to play on the prior gen, and it's going to look better on the Xbox Series X. It's probably going to play better, but it's not going to be made exclusively for the Series X. This has made a lot of people upset. A lot of people don't really care, but some people feel that, you know, that's fine if you want to make games that kind of play on both. But some people feel like it's kind of like a ball and chain that holds these games down. And if you're bragging about 12.4 teraflops or whatever on your console, and you're charging $500 for this console, or however much it ends up being, they want to see at least one game a year that is exclusive to the console that really uses the full juice. For developers not to have to be like, well, it has to run on the Xbox One X at 60 frames per second. We can't have that many enemies on screen, or whatever, or whatever kind of compromise they may have to make. But other people are like, well, this new generation, it's not going to be that much of a difference. So I don't know. Where do you guys fall on this? Do you think it's weird that they're not going to have any exclusive games at all for 2 years, and that they would say that?
I agree that they do need at least something to show off the console and what it's capable of and how powerful it can be. But I kind of expected this with how console upgrades are now. They're kind of more like just getting a new, better PC.
Right.
And that's how they see it also. So they're kind of going like the Xbox One X approach, where you have one game, but depending on which console you put the disc in, is how well the specs are going to be. And that's like already programmed ahead of time, and it's basically like a PC that's optimized for you depending on the box you have. But I kind of expected this. Like, if we want to go back to PlayStation for a second, and to an extent Microsoft, there is nearly 100 million people who have a PlayStation 4. Almost 100 million. And to simply just jump to the PS5 and not have versions of that game for the PS4, I think would be pretty silly. I think a few years down the line, it's like you can completely cut off the PS4 and just make PS5 exclusive games. But you don't want to just like completely cut off your PS4 audience. Now, at the same time, I think there should be some games, like I said in the beginning, where it should be like showing off what the console is capable of. Like maybe God of War 2 can be PS5 exclusive and just like show off what it's doing, but maybe Horizon 2 can be a PS4, PS5 hybrid. But now back to Xbox, like same deal with like
What about Halo Infinite? That would be a game I think should be an exclusive.
you probably want to mix that for now while people are transitioning over, if it's coming out very soon.
I guess
I think
I'm looking at it from
they should come out with I think maybe the best solution is to come out with a new IP to start off your console.
So I guess it depends on how you look at it. If you're looking at it from a pro-consumer point of view, I think it's a very good decision, because you have 50 million people. Like, if they don't have enough money to buy a new Xbox, cool. Like, they can sit there and wait. They can save up. They can make better decisions. I think that's a good thing. But if you're trying to sell a console from a business perspective now, from Microsoft's perspective, if you're trying to sell a console, right, and the main problem that you had this past generation is that your console didn't have any freaking games, right? and,
Yep.
and now you're going to come out and ask people to spend $500, and you don't even
Exactly.
have enough confidence in your own console to put one of your titles as an exclusive on that console. What third party is going to be like, oh, okay, I'll come and make a game exclusive for your console? They're not going to do it. They're not
Nope.
going to do it. And what you're going to find is 2 years from now, when you start making exclusives, you're going to be behind the curve. Sony's going to have all these exclusives out, and you're going to have the same exact problem that you had this generation. And so I like it. It's just baffling to me that Microsoft is like, it's just flat out like making all, like, I can understand like doing like a partial, like 80-20 or something like that, but all that just, I don't know. Stan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with you. To me, it sounds like you're signaling to a lot of people like consider getting the new Xbox 2 years after it comes out, right? Because like why did they, well, at least the common perception, I guess, out there of why they didn't do as well as Sony in this generation is that they didn't have those exclusive games, right?
Right.
And I can tell you, PlayStation 5 is going to come out. You're not going to be able to play the next God of War game on your PS4 or the next Horizon game on your PS4. You know, they're already probably developing those games right now for the next console. And I don't think they're spending much time thinking about, oh, should we make a PS4 version of this game also? Like, no.
Yeah.
At least I don't think they're going to. So if you don't have games like that for the first 2 years, you know, like you really need them out the gate, right, to sell the system. But if you're telling people you're not going to have them games like really taking advantage of the
extra
hardware,
power.
yeah, for the next 2 years, at least first party games,
I
then
think
yeah, it seems like you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot to me.
I think if I was Microsoft or Sony, what I would do personally is rely upon third party to make the hybrid.
But why would they
games.
do that?
Well,
On the hybrid. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I
yeah,
thought you were
on
going
the
to say
hybrid,
exclusive. Okay.
and let the console exclusives be like PS5 and Xbox Series X only.
Right.
Exactly.
Like I understand their approach and they want to ease the consumers into the next one, but at the same time, like you said, where's the incentive to get this console on day one?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be really there unless the new features are so like an absolute must need that you have to jump over to that console. It makes me wonder if they think that the console specs and features alone will motivate people, which I don't think it will, because our main man Reggie Fils-Aimé once said it's the games ultimately at the end of the day that sell.
And you have to attract developers to develop for your console. And I guess it's kind of incentive when you can say, hey, the PS5 has an install base of 10 million people and we still have our entire 50 million. But the PS5 Sony could just say, no, we have an install base of 120 million. So
Right.
we have the 106 that we had before, and then we still have the 10. So it's a lose-lose either way. So I just don't see it. I know some people are talking about scalability and that, Halo Infinite is going to look way better on the Series X than it'll look on the One X. That might be true, but if we've seen some of the explanations between the PS5 and the PS4 Pro, right? And keep in mind, the Series X is supposed to be a much larger jump between their current generation and the next Xbox. But we've seen between the PS5 and the PS4 Pro that even things like load times are reduced by to an eighth of the time, right? So like there is going to be that consideration, or is like a PS4 version or an Xbox One X version of the game, of a new game, are they just going to let it have like a minute and a half or 2 minute long load times? And then, you know, the new version's going to have like a 30-second load time because the map is so big. You know, is Skyrim?
That's actually a really good point. You have to, but just to add on what you're saying real quick, the developers would have to create and program the loading times, the difference between a hard drive and a solid state drive when optimizing these games for the console, which can be a pain in itself.
Yeah, I mean, look at Elder Scrolls 6, for example. I don't think that'll be limited, but you know, if they want a map that takes 4 hours to traverse, but on a PS4 Pro or an Xbox One X, loading, you know, coming out of a castle to load that map would take, you know, 3.5 minutes. They're probably not going to have a map that big, right? They're gonna reduce the size. So I know people are talking about scalability and like, oh, these games are going to look better on the Series X, but I don't think you're going to see the full power of that until you see a game that's actually been designed from the ground up without that limitation in mind. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, because anyways, I could just bleed from the mouth making that same point over and over again. But
someone needs to get clarification and ask them if the new Halo is coming out on both, right?
Well, apparently it is. I mean, so I don't know. Well, one thing that's interesting though is the new Hellblade game, Senua's Saga or whatever it's called. That is supposed to be an exclusive Xbox game, Xbox Series X game, right? From what we've seen, it's a Series X only, like no backwards, no prior gen. It's for the Series X. And it
is third party, technically. Well, I guess maybe second party since Microsoft bought it.
They bought
Ninja Theory out. So
yeah. So if that's the case, I guess we're not seeing this game for 2 years. You know? So I guess we just watched a really cool CG trailer.
No, it wasn't a CG trailer. It was an in-game.
Okay.
So they say.
It was an in-game trailer.
A highly polished in-game trailer on a. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, you guys have anything else you want to add to this before we get to our quick news here?
No, not really. I just don't think it's a good idea from a business perspective, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see the ups and downs on both perspectives, but ultimately you do want something to show off how great your console is.
That must-have title, yeah.
Because
like Breath of the Wild was the must-have title for Switch. Like something like Horizon 2 or God of War 2 or any other Sony exclusive, maybe a new Uncharted game, you need something to get people buying that PS5.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, with the Xbox in mind, I think the price I've been seeing here is around $500. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but if we're looking at $500, Xbox is making the case, why should I buy this instead of buying a gaming PC? And if you don't have any exclusives like made for that game, that console, if your only case to be had is, well, the games look better on here. Okay, well, it'll look better if I go. You'll have to spend more money, but on a gaming PC or upgrading your PC. So I don't know. I just don't see it. But maybe this will be, maybe they're going to do some, maybe Game Pass and everything else they got going on will carry them, but I just don't see it. Next up on the agenda here, we have some quick news. We're just going to kind of acknowledge because there's not too much to say about it. Might give a few thoughts here, but Xenoblade Chronicles Remake, there was a leak on the Danish website Cool Shop that says that this game is going to have a May 29th, 2020 release date. That's a very believable date for me. Aside from the fact that that's pre-E3, which is weird.
And it does land on a Friday, which is a Nintendo tradition to release games on a Friday.
Well, there's 52 of them in a year, so I guess if you're going to pick one, yeah. So it's possible. It seems like a reasonable time to release it. I would be happy with that, given that's kind of after Cyberpunk and 7 Remake. So I'd be okay with that. But we'll have to see. Then we have Tales of Arise has been given a teen rating for PC and console in Korea. I think probably most definitely South Korea, right? So apparently people are speculating because this has a rating that now the game is supposed to be coming out soon, because usually games don't get ratings from the SRB or wherever until the game is about to come out. So people are speculating that this game is going to come out like springtime, whether that's next month or like April or May or March, sometime like that, instead of, the fall. I don't
Now,
know.
I wonder if that's in Japan, right? Because typically these Tales games, they have like a delay, like at least a few month delay.
I feel like they're going to try to get a worldwide release with this, don't you think? Like, don't you think they're getting to that level?
Maybe.
I was
I
asking
mean, that
myself
would be
that
a
also.
first for their series, I think, but maybe they will.
I don't know. Eric, what did you say?
No, I was just saying. I'm trying to remember if they said something about the global release.
Yeah.
And I can't remember on the top of my head.
The only thing that seems weird to me is if you're going to release it sooner rather than later. If you're releasing a JRPG, if you release this game in March, you're an idiot, because it's just going to get decimated by one of the largest JRPGs on the planet, the 7 Remake. It would only make sense to me to release it in April or February, or I guess May. So, but it just seems like a bad time to do it.
Let's see here. No specific release date yet. Mark the calendar says yeah, but Tales Rise is coming sometime 2020. A couple places say worldwide release in 2020, but I don't know if it's a simultaneous worldwide release.
All right. Well,
2020. So
we'll have to see. I mean, if it is coming out soon, I'm sure we'll hear about it and we'll get another trailer. But I mean, we haven't even seen like really in depth on the combat or anything. So I don't know. Seems kind of weird. All right. We have our next and last topic for the day. Discord question from Tayson, who says, what are our thoughts on the upcoming release of Phantasy Star Online 2 in the West? Are we excited for the game? What do we think of its free-to-play model compared to other MMOs with a subscription like Final Fantasy XIV? So just some quick background on this. The game came out in Japan in 2012 and other areas, but it didn't come out to the West, and people have been wanting this game to come to the West. It's built a big following. People have been playing it in Japanese and even English-speaking players. There's a big community to help players to play the game, and people are really excited for it to come over now. But specifically, the pay model, it seems to be having a premium type pay service you would see where you pay a monthly fee, but it also has a free-to-play model where you can pay for certain, cosmetic upgrades or, like, hey, if you want more storage, things like that, but you're not actual end game purchases like, hey, I want to pay to be level 99. These are definitely quality of life upgrades. But if you want the premium monthly, payment, I'm going to pay this amount every month, you are going to get certain things that are going to assist you with the game. So that's kind of a rundown from what I was able to research. Eric, I know you said you had some experience actually playing the game. Did you want to kind of weigh in here first?
Yeah, so I've played both Phantasy Star Online 2, and you all know I'm a heavy player of Final Fantasy XIV, and their structure, the structures between them are different, but I think they're both kind of ethical in their own way. Phantasy Star Online 2 basically is a loot grinding type of game, action RPG type of deal. And it is free to play. You don't have to pay to play it. You can go get all the way to end game just fine, being on the free to play model. They don't do anything to try to hold you back. They actually encourage you to play as much as you want. Where the free to play premium service comes in is mostly like all the cosmetic stuff, quality of life features like more inventory space and more quality of life stuff for like customization of your room or something like that. And there is a lot of incentive to get the to pay. I think it's $10 a month in Japan. I don't know how they'll structure it here, but it is $10 a month in Japan. And when I did play it, I did get that, and it was worthwhile because when you do heavy end game stuff, like it's really nice to have those features in place. And for FF14 in particular, you are paying now. You do get a free trial up to level 35, but after that, you have to buy the game, and you have to pay a monthly subscription, $12.99 for it. Now, if you ask me personally, what is the better structure? I actually would tell you is FF14's, and that is because when you have these developers, when you have a subscription-based service, they know what their budget is. They know what content they can create. Like a good majority of not paying for it, and or people paying for the microtransactions and stuff like that, your budget is a lot more unpredictable. So it can lead to a lot of things like, oh, well, we didn't get as much content this patch as we did in the previous one. And they can leave people frustrated and stuff like that. I don't think PSO2 in particular is a victim of this. I think more of the free to play, like the free to play MMOs are more at fault of this, if anything. But I think PSO2 is probably maybe that nice meat in the middle. I still think the subscription base is ultimately better, but I think the option to pay for a premium service if you want to participate more heavily in the in-game, I think is a fair way to come with your online service.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with their model. I guess it is kind of walking that fine line where it would be really tempting, I think, for them to start making it a little messy with the way these end-game purchases occur and some of the benefits that you do get. But it seems like they've walked that fine line well. And I think that it's a good way for them to help allow people to be able to play the game for free. You know, that's definitely a good way to get that user base in there, let people try the game out. I think it's in a way pro consumer, but ultimately I think I do prefer 14's method of, hey, play for free till level 35. And then afterwards you have to make a decision. I think that's totally fair too. I realize that's kind of difficult because 14's got millions upon millions of people playing, but Phantasy Star Online 2 has been around for 8 years now, almost. So I think that they probably have a big enough base to probably do something similar if they wanted to. But Stan, did you want to kind of weigh in here and give us your thoughts?
Well, yeah, as far as am I excited for the game? Just personally, not really, because I'm not really into MMOs. They just kind of don't click with me. But I do agree that I am much more skeptical of a free-to-play model, right? Just because of how many ways it can go wrong, which Eric already kind of touched on, right? If you don't have enough paying users, then it can feel like a lot of the content they add is not worthwhile. But then at the same time, you have to manage your content so that those players who are paying, right, stick around, right? So you kind of have to prioritize towards the paying audience, right, and develop more content for that audience primarily, and then sometimes the rest of the content that's available to everyone can feel lackluster, right, or get very old very fast. So just for that reason only, even though I'm not into these games, I'm much more skeptical of that kind of model, having a free to play version with a monthly subscription tacked on as like a premium service, basically.
Let me put it this way. FF14 A Realm Reborn came out in 2013, and not once have they missed their 3 to 4 month content patch update. And each and every one, ever since 2013, day one, has been a very significant content patch. And they add a lot of content that keeps you going for that few months until the next one comes out. And they've been able to do this consistently because they go on a subscription based model. So, and when you have a free to play model, like say like Terra or Ion now, who depend a lot more on microtransactions and stuff like that, it's like you don't know if the next month that you will be allowed to create something that you had planned out.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
So it can be really bad in that sense.
Well, one thing I would say though, sorry to cut you off, but one thing I would say with this game is if it's coming out in English for the first time, and from what I understand, all the content that's been released since 2012 is going to be out with this main version. So it's not going to be like, you know, just the base version only. It's going to be all of it. If you can play that for free and your experience is not significantly ruined for not paying, that's a lot of content.
That's true.
You know,
it's been out for so long. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is something to be said too, I think, you know, but,
the game is fun though. I encourage people to play it when it comes out on PC or Xbox One. It plays great on either keyboard and mouse or a controller.
There we go. It's got the Eric seal of approval. Not easy.
It's got it's a lot more anime than, you know, than I care for, because, you know, I love the old artwork of Phantasy Star, but especially Phantasy Star Online 1. But it is what it is. There's still a great character customization to it. You can try to make it as less weeb looking as you can. But that is the nature of the game, but it's still really good. The combat's really fun.
So we're supposed to be getting a open beta patch, or not open beta version, at some point this month. So I'm sure we'll start to see some gameplay footage and people talking about their impressions. So definitely look forward to that.
Likely come out in April or May. They said spring 2020. So it's probably somewhere in that vicinity.
All right. So there's that. And we will have to end it there, but we're planning on having another episode as usual next week. And I guess I can't think of anything else to say. So I'll see you all then. Take it easy, guys.
All right. Take care.
See you next time.